A&P Assignment 4 by Stella Green, Animal Adaptations. I will be doing the adaptations section of this assignment on the horse and the bird. The horse is adapted to its environment in many ways. Firstly, as they used to live in marshy woodland areas, they had toes. As the woodlands began to be cut down and they began moving into living into open plains, that's when their toes began to disappear and they began to grow just one toe, the hoof. This is so they can move faster and get away from predators. To aid with this, they also grew taller. The first horse was about the size of a dog, and now, as you know, horses come in all different shapes and sizes. As they grew taller, their leg bones became a lot thicker and enabled them to have more muscle, which therefore enabled them to be able to run faster and cover more ground, getting away from predators. Another adaptation of the horse to their environment is of their long face. They started looking about the size of a dog, they also had shorter faces. Then as they evolved to be living on outside plains, so it's more open toward predators, their faces grew longer, which enabled them to be able to eat and be able to still see around them above the long grass. Because horses are trickle feeders and they graze for most of their day in the wild, they needed to be able to be consuming food constantly while still being able to look out for predators. That's why they've got a longer face. Finally, another way a horse is adapted is that they have many blunt teeth, which enables them to grind down all types of different grasses and enables them to digest it. They need this because of the way they eat, and they're eating constantly throughout the day. They don't need any particularly sharp teeth like, say, a tiger would, because they don't need to tear through anything like meat. But because they need to be able to grind down grasses and crunch through different fibrous foods, they need lots of blunt, flat teeth so they can grind it down, therefore making it digestible for them to eat. There are so many different species and types of birds. For this adaptation part of the assignment, instead of focusing on one bird, I'm going to focus on one thing that all birds have in common and all birds need, and that's their beak. A bird's beak has two main functions: to catch their food and to build their homes. All birds' beaks will look different, and you won't necessarily think they're used for the same things. You can't possibly think that a robin's beak can do the same as a magpie's beak, but they can. They're adapted in that way for that certain bird. Each bird's beak will have adapted a certain way because of the food they eat and the environment they live in. For example, a bigger bird will have bigger food, therefore bigger beak. A smaller bird, if they live in a forest area, the type of things they'll be needing to pick up is twigs and leaves, so therefore they must have a big enough beak and a strong enough beak to be able to pick up the twigs. One main component of a sparrow's diet is seeds. That's why a sparrow's beak shape is known as a cracker. Because of its shape, it enables them to be able to crack open nuts and eat seeds easily. Blackbirds, on the other hand, survive mainly on a diet of insects, so therefore their beak needs to be bigger than a sparrow's because they'll be having bigger food, but it doesn't need to be as strong because it's not actually cracking into anything, it's just burrowing around in the ground. A duck's beak again is very different because it's long and flat because it enables them to be able to get small plants and animals from the water or pond that they live in. All these different birds have different shaped beaks because of their environment and the food and what they need to be able to do to survive, so each of these birds' beaks enables them to be the best they can in their environment. The pentadactyl limb has evolved in thousands of different ways over the year. Below in the photo is just a few of the different animals that have one. Ranging from horses to humans to bats and to whales, there are many, many animals that have a pentadactyl limb. And they have had to evolve to face all the difficulties that different animals may have and to help them be the best they can in their environment, because the animal law is the survival of the fittest. The horse's pentadactyl limb has evolved to help it do what it does best: running. Millions of years ago, the horse was very small, so therefore the pentadactyl limb was smaller. Over the years it has evolved, so instead of there being a couple of small bones in it, it has evolved and fused together into one big, thick, strong bone, allowing the horse to take bigger strides and therefore run faster, Coupled with this, it allows there to be a thick set of muscle going all the way around the bone, allowing the horse to be stronger and be able to get away from predators quicker and have a better chance of survival. Because the horse's pentadactyl limb has changed, it also has allowed to some differentiation in their diet. As they can now travel faster and further, and they have got taller, they can also have more different types of fibrous foods such as branches and leaves of trees that they can now reach, which they wouldn't be able to before, as well as their general grass that they have always had. A bird's pentadactyl limb is slightly different because, as you know, it's adapted for flight. But if you look at the shape of it, it isn't that different. In fact, all of them are pretty similar. They're long and thin, kind of like a hand or a leg. As you can see, the bat has bones sticking out so it spreads their wings, and a whale's is slightly thicker because of their size. But as you can see from a bird, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell it was a wing, but that is how it looks because it has adapted to be able to take flight, rather than it being used for other functions like getting away from a predator or trying to catch a prey. In most birds there are 3 fingers, and you can see this in this picture, just here. The bird's pentadactyl limb, like the others, used to have 5 fingers. It is unknown why it has evolved into 3, but there are some theories behind this. The main ones is that people think 3 fingers are somehow better for raking and grasping for the birds that need to catch prey. Animals that live in different altitudes will have different respiratory requirements and therefore have different respiratory adaptations. Therefore, when animals travel to different areas with different altitudes, you need to be able to give them time to adapt. For example, when the Olympics are in different countries, you need to be able to give your animal time over there to adapt. So when the horses are brought over to Beijing, they have to come over a few weeks before so they learn to be able to perform in that scenario, including the heat, as well as the different respiratory problems they may have. Generally, the equine body will start to adapt within the first 12 hours of being in the new scenario. When exposed to a higher altitude, the red blood cells that are stored in the spleen are released. Therefore, it increases the capacity of blood which carries the oxygen, therefore making it easier for the horse to perform. With an increase in cardiac output and an increase in heart rate, the capillaries that would have been constricted open up, increasing the blood supply to the tissues and reducing the blood pressure. Therefore, if your horse has been over in that scenario for a few weeks, it then would be breathing just like it had been living there for a while, so it would not restrict it in competition in any way. A bird, on the other hand, lives in that type of altitude the whole time, differing altitudes in fact, as it flies from one area to another, so it would not need any adapting time whatsoever.